Part 41. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yanyun Yuchi. Chapter 401. Guanghe Huafu, in the courtyard of Villa No. 7. After the giant white bat transformed by Edric left the courtyard, Zhang Fengjai dispersed the sharp sword condensed by the grey energy, then turned around and walked to the four inner family masters in night clothes, and asked indifferently. You should be the assassins sent by the Zhu family in the provincial capital to assassinate Zhu Zhenjun. When Zhang Fengjai guessed the purpose of sneaking into the villa, the four black-clothed inner family masters trembled slightly, and fear immediately appeared in their eyes. After all, the thin boy in front of him was a Taoist monk who could easily defeat the legendary vampire and transform into a goshawk monster. If he wanted to kill someone to silence him, it would only take a blink of an eye. Answer me, Zhang Fengjai asked with a heavier tone, staring at a black-clothed master who was strong, the strongest, and obviously the person in charge. Yes, we are the assassins hired by the Zhu family to assassinate the young master and his woman. The strong man in black nodded and answered when Zhang Fengjai glared at him. Who ordered you? Or who contacted you? Zhang Fengjai continued to ask after his gloomy face gradually eased. It was Zhu Laosan of the Zhu family, that is, Zhu Shijin, the chairman of Daxin Group. Knowing that the more straightforward and detailed his answer was, the more satisfied the thin boy in front of him would be, and he and others might be able to save their lives, so the strong man in black explained in detail without hesitation or concealment. 2 days ago, Zhu Shijin asked me to meet at Xiaoao Pavilion in Yunhai Villa, and then he was willing to pay a sky-high price of 100 million to take the young master's head and 100,000 to take his woman's life. After hearing the explanation of the strong man in black, Zhang Fengjai thought about it for a while, and then gave instructions to the four men in black. You guys go back to the Zhu family in the provincial capital now, and tell the Zhu family's patriarch that the eldest young master is my brother, Zhang Fengjai. If the Zhu family dares to send assassins to disturb my brother, then I will go to the Zhu family in person and use the sword to tell him about my brother. Don't worry, young man, I promise to complete the task. Unlike the vampire Edric, who didn't know what was good for him, the strong man in black nodded and agreed quickly, then stood up and picked up the unconscious short man in black, and left the villa with 3 companions. Yezi, have you successfully advanced to the foundation building realm? Just as the 5 men in black had just left the villa, Zhuang Jian rushed to Zhang Fengjai in 3 or 2 steps, and asked with a hint of expectation in her eyes. That's right. As Zhang Fengjai nodded in acknowledgement, a complicated look appeared in his eyes. Although the reduced Hunyuan taking heart method and the grey energy in the Danshan that was a fusion of innate Yuan Li and spiritual power made him lose all the feelings and processes of the realm promotion, the effect of the Yinhan and Yinsha energy absorbed by the new Hunyuan taking heart method and the strength improvement brought by the grey energy was far beyond his imagination. Before the changes in the Hunyuan taking heart method and the Danshan spiritual power, even if he used the Wuji sword method taught by his third grandfather, he could only barely fight against the strong man who had just broken through the foundation building realm. Fighting is not defeating and killing, but just barely staying undefeated. But now, the intention of breaking free from the constraints of the body not only allows him to clearly sense all the movements within a radius of dozens of meters, but also allows him to keenly capture the lightning-fast trajectory of the vampire. The grey energy that combines the innate Yuan Li and spiritual power increases the power of the sword energy attack by at least dozens of times, and can easily break the magic defense and physical defense of the 4th level vampire of the foundation building. In other words, in less than a day and a night, his own strength has reached the 5th level of the foundation building realm from the peak of the 9th level of Qi condensation, and he is not sure whether he has reached the limit. Although the rapid improvement of strength is a good thing, this uncontrolled and familiar improvement not only did not make him feel a little joy, but instead he felt an unreal panic and worry in his heart. Therefore, after telling Zhuang Jian and Yiwen to pay more attention to safety, he turned back to the guest room on the second floor of the villa and continued to explore the changes of the Hunyuan taking heart method and the grey energy of the Danshan. Time passed by. As the sun rose and all things revived, Zhu Zhenjun, who had been busy outside for a day and a night, returned to the villa with He Tongtong and Lu Yui with a slightly tired look. Although he did not know Yaiwen, who was as cold as an iceberg, he was familiar with Zhuang Jian from the Supernatural Research Institute. So, after a simple greeting to Zhuang Jian, Zhu Zhenjun hugged He Tongtong and prepared to go upstairs to rest, but unexpectedly saw a giant black bat lying behind the sofa, and immediately asked with a look of surprise in his eyes. "Teacher Zhuang, is this an animal or a monster?" "A powerful monster," Zhuang Jian replied. "Did you catch it, or did my brother catch it?" How could a weakling like himself, who was at the 4th level of Qi condensation, deal with the Black Bat King who had reached the 5th level of foundation building? So, after giving Zhu Zhenjun a blank look, Zhuang Jian ignored him and walked towards the kitchen, intending to prepare a hearty breakfast for Zhang Fenjai. Having never seen such a huge bat before, Zhu Zhenjun quickly ran behind the sofa, and while admiring it carefully, he couldn't help looking for a suitable part for grilling. Because he suddenly thought of the flesh and blood of the black giant python that he had enjoyed some time ago, its endless aftertaste and its powerful effect in changing one's physique. "Master Zhu, this bat monster is not dead yet, be careful, it wakes up suddenly and scratches you." Just when Zhu Zhenjun reached out and was about to open the fleshy wings wrapped around his body to see if there were any parts of the bat's body suitable for barbecue, Lu Yui's warning voice suddenly came to his ears, scaring him and taking a few steps back. After all, Lu Yui is also a powerful monk like Zhang Fenjai. "Brother Zhu, don't be afraid. I have completely destroyed this bat. There is no danger." Just when Zhu Zhenjun retreated to the sofa in horror, Zhang Fenjai's comforting voice came to his ears again. "Brother, you're up," Zhu Zhenjun said with a smile as he turned to look at Zhang Fenjai with a sigh of relief. "Easy, go call your sister Yuxuan and ask her to take leave and come back immediately." After giving instructions to Lu Yui, who was about to go back to the room to rest, Zhang Fenjai walked to the sofa and motioned Zhu Zhenjun and He Tongtong to sit down. He said straight to the point. "Brother Zhu, sister-in-law, yesterday evening the villa was attacked by 5 top insiders from the provincial capital." Zhu family, Zhu Zhenjun, whose breathing suddenly became heavier, asked with anger gradually appearing in his eyes. "Zhu Shujin, the chairman of Daxin Group, will take your head for a sky-high price of 100 million, and take your sister-in-law's life for a low price of 100,000. Zhang Fenjai replied without any concealment. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 402. Guanghe Huafu, in Villa Number 7. Since Zhu Shujin spent a huge amount of money to hire an internal master to assassinate Zhu Zhenjun and He Tongtong, it means that they have officially torn their faces apart. So, telling Zhu Zhenjun the plot and process of the entire assassination in detail is not only to hope that he and He Tongtong can pay more attention to safety, but also to remind them not to return to the Zhu family in the provincial capital for the time being to avoid falling into the trap set by the Zhu family. Bang! Zhu Zhenjun cursed with gritted teeth as he hammered the coffee table with his clenched right fist. "Damn it, they actually ignored blood ties and started to kill me and Tongtong. Did their consciences get eaten by dogs?" If it weren't for his sudden rise in the business world, the decadent and rigid Zhu family would have lost the qualification of the 4 major families in the provincial capital long ago, and it might even be swallowed up by emerging forces. But what he never expected was that the family would use marriage as an excuse to get rid of him, which made Zhu Zhenjun feel extremely angry, and at the same time, a trace of sadness and sorrow emerged in his heart. "Junzi." Holding Zhu Zhenjun's arm, He Tongtong looked at him with worry in his eyes. "Tongtong, don't worry, I'm fine." Gently patting He Tongtong's jade hand, Zhu Zhenjun forced out a smile of relief, then turned his head and asked Zhang Fenjai with gritted teeth. "Brother, where are the 5 bastards who wanted to assassinate me? I let them go." "Why?" Zhu Zhenjun asked puzzledly. "Because I want them to tell your father that if the Zhu family sends assassins to disturb my brothers, then I will personally destroy the entire Zhu family," Zhang Fengjai replied indifferently. In fact, the reason why the 5 top masters of the inner family were let go was not only to let them warn the patriarch of the Zhu family, but also to inform Zhu Zhenjun's father in detail through the scenes they saw with their own eyes, so that the entire Zhu family could recognize the reality and take the initiative to apologize and reconcile with Zhu Zhenjun. After all, Zhu Zhenjun is a person who attaches great importance to feelings and family affection. He doesn't want to see the only brother he recognizes, and finally fight to the death with the family. "Brother, thank you." Zhang Fengjai's righteousness and support moved Zhu Zhenjun, and he quickly stood up to thank him. "Brother Zhu, do we still need to be so polite to each other?" After an unhappy criticism, Zhang Fengjai reminded with a smile on his face. "Brother Zhu, sister-in-law, don't go to rest for the time being. I will make you a delicious meal next. Use this guy's meat." The deliciousness and powerful effects of the monster's flesh and blood made Zhu Zhenjun quickly get rid of the anger and sadness brought by the family's ruthlessness and disloyalty, and then pointed at the black bat behind the sofa and asked, "This guy's meat is sour and bitter, and it is not suitable for cooking delicious food. I have more excellent monster meat and blood." After shaking his head to deny Zhu Zhenjun's guess, Zhang Fengjai looked up at the 2 figures walking in the door of the living room and couldn't help frowning. Because compared to Shen Loxi when I first saw her at work after the Mid-Autumn Festival, she is now not only much thinner, but also in a bad mental state, giving people a sick feeling. He extended his hand to signal Shen Loxi to sit next to him, and then put her jade hand on his thigh. Zhang Fengjai used the method of taking pulses to carefully check her internal conditions. Weak spleen and stomach, insufficient qi and blood, blocked meridians. After a careful examination, Zhang Fengjai looked up at Wang Denmei standing behind the sofa and asked, "Denmei, has the paternity test not been handled yet? Whether it is weak spleen and stomach, insufficient qi and blood, or blocked meridians, most of the causes of this are psychological." Thinking of the conflict with the yellow-haired youth when he just went to work after the Mid-Autumn Festival, he pointed out the true identity of the yellow-haired youth, and the selfish thoughts of Shen's mother revealed by the yellow-haired youth. He vaguely suspected that Shen Loxi's psychological problems were likely related to the paternity test. First, she looked down at Shen Loxi. After a hint of hesitation flashed across Wang Denmei's eyes, she finally shook her head and said nothing more. "Mr. Shen, what's going on?" Since Wang Denmei was worried and unwilling to say more, Zhang Fengjai could only ask Shen Loxi, the person involved. "Yezi, don't worry. The paternity test has been handled. I will go back to work at the group tomorrow," Shen Loxi explained with a forced smile. "Don't worry about me." Facing Shen Loxi's irresponsible concealment, Zhang Fengjai couldn't help but sneer and warned. "Weak spleen and stomach will make you lose appetite and become weaker and weaker. Insufficient qi and blood will gradually deteriorate the functions of your internal organs and your body will enter a state of aging prematurely. Blocked meridians will cause an imbalance of yin and yang in your body, and your body will often experience irritability, shock, palpitations, depression, heartache, panic, and nightmares. Shen Loxi, if you allow your condition to continue to deteriorate, you will die without any signs in as short as 3 months or as long as half a year." Master Zhang, because of Madame's strong obstruction, not only did the paternity test between Lu Xingqiao and Minister Lu fail, but Madame also transferred all of her and Minister Liu's shares to Lu Xingqiao. She didn't expect Shen Loxi's condition to be so serious. The hesitation in Wang Denmei's eyes was instantly replaced by determination, and she immediately told her about the trouble Shen Loxi was facing. Because Yongsheng is a group jointly founded by the chairman and his wife, and the initial capital for the group was also provided by the Lu family. The wife and Minister Lu hold 37% and 8% of the group's shares respectively, and the chairman and sister Loxi only hold 38% and 5% of the group's shares. If Lu Xinchao gets all the shares of the wife and Minister Lu, he will not only become the largest shareholder of the group in one fell swoop, but also seize the throne of the chairman, and then drive sister Loxi out of the company. After hearing Wang Denmiai's explanation, Shen Loxi, who no longer needed to pretend to be strong, threw herself into Zhang Fenjai's arms and sobbed softly without suppressing her inner grievances and sadness. After Zhang Fenjai and Zhu Zhenjun looked at each other, they couldn't help but frown. In this world, everything can be faked, but the face that determines a person's fate cannot be easily changed by anyone. Through the judgment of face, Lu Xiaoyi's completely closed children's palace not only determines his fate of having no children in this life, but also proves that there is no blood relationship between him and Lu Xinchao. If that is the case, what reason did Shen Loxi's mother Lu Shuhua have to stop the paternity test between Lu Xiaoyi and Lu Xinchao, and why did she give all of her and Lu Xiaoyi's shares to Lu Xinchao, causing her lover and relatives to lose control of the group? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yanyun Yuqi. Chapter 403. Guanghe Huafu, in Villa Number 7. Unlike Zhang Fenjai, who considered face and destiny, Zhu Zhenjun first thought of the distribution ratio of Yongsheng Group's shares and the issue of group management control after hearing Wang Denmiai's explanation. According to the original share ratios held by the 4 members of the Shen family, and then combined with the equity gap after the transfer, Zhu Zhenjun frowned and asked, "Denmiai, since Yongsheng Group is a joint stock limited company, there should be other shareholders holding original shares. Why doesn't Chairman Shen join forces or buy the shares held by the remaining shareholders? In this way, Shen Chengao can keep his position as chairman, and Shen Loxi will not be kicked out of the group. After all, the difference in shares between the two parties is only 1 percentage point. It is not difficult to overtake. Master Zhu, the group has 12% of the remaining shares. Madam's parents each hold 3% of the shares, and the chairman's parents each hold 300% of the shares. This is troublesome." Hearing Wang Denmiai's statement of the ownership of the remaining shares, Zhu Zhenjun shrugged his shoulders, shook his head with a trace of helplessness in his eyes, and sighed. Lu Shuhua holds 37% of the shares, Lu Xiaoyi holds 8% of the shares, and Liu's parents hold 6% of the shares. Then, the original shareholding ratio of the entire Lu family in the group reached 51%, and they already had absolute control. The Shen family had no chance of turning defeat into victory. Even if the Lu family operated the entire group to go public, they could further reduce the shareholding ratio in the hands of the Shen family by means of diluting the shares, and finally achieve the conspiracy of swallowing up all the shares. Hearing Zhu Zhenjun and Wang Denmiai talking about the shareholding ratio of Yongsheng Group, combined with Lu Shuhua's weird and strange behavior, Zhang Fenjai vaguely felt that the identity of the yellow-haired young man was probably not as simple as he imagined. At the same time, he couldn't help but feel guilty, blaming himself for being too careless at the time and not carefully observing the fortune, wealth, and luck of the yellow-haired young man, so that Shen Loxi fell into such a passive situation. Just when the atmosphere in the living room fell silent because of the trouble Shen Loxi encountered, a very pleasant but slightly naughty mobile phone ringtone suddenly sounded from her body. "I don't want to grow up, I don't want to grow up, there will be no fairy tales in the world when I grow up." After leaving Zhang Fenjai's arms with a slightly red face, Shen Loxi quickly took out her mobile phone and took a look, and asked directly after answering, "Uncle Su, what's wrong?" "Miss, come back quickly, the master is in trouble." Su Shiqiang's extremely panicked voice came from the phone immediately. The mobile phone in her hand fell directly to the ground, and Shen Loxi's face turned pale instantly, and a panicked look flashed in her eyes. Then, when she suddenly stood up and was about to leave, she was held by Zhang Fengjai, who stood up at the same time. "Mr. Shen, I will go back with you." Holding Shen Loxi's slender and soft jade hand, Zhang Fengjai proposed solemnly. After the panic in her eyes calmed down a little, Shen Loxi nodded vigorously, and then pulled Zhang Fengjai out of the living room quickly. "Let's go. Let's see if we can help Zhu Zhenjun," who also stood up, reminded He Tongtong, Zhuang Jian and others. The Shen family villa is not too far from Zhu Zhenjun's villa. With Shen Loxi running desperately, it took less than 2 minutes to reach the door of the Shen family villa. At this time, Su Shiqiang, the housekeeper, was guarding the gate of the villa. At this moment, there were still tears in the corners of Su Shiqiang's eyes. "Uncle Su, where is my father?" Shen Loxi, who did not notice Su Shiqiang's strangeness, asked anxiously. Su Shiqiang, who was about to answer, rushed to him with surprise when he saw Zhang Fengjai, who also came, and then knelt on his knees and begged. "Dr. Zhang, please save my master." Su Shiqiang's sudden kneeling and begging made Shen Loxi's mind immediately flash through a very terrible thought, which made her voice tremble slightly, and asked with an extremely nervous look. "Uncle Su, what happened to my father?" "Miss, the master committed suicide by taking poison this morning," Su Shiqiang replied with a choked voice. The sudden blow, coupled with a weak and sick body, made Shen Loxi spit out a mouthful of blood and fell backwards with a black vision. Fortunately, Zhang Fengjai, who discovered something wrong in time, reached out to hug the fainted Shen Loxi, and then reached out to press her Beihui and Yongquan points to prevent the sadness after waking up from hurting her mind and heart. Then, he handed Shen Loxi to Wang Denmei, and then ordered Su Shiqiang. "Butler Su, take me to see the chairman's body immediately." "Dr. Zhang, come with me." Quickly getting up and pushing open the courtyard door, Su Shiqiang took Zhang Fengjai and walked quickly into the living room, but saw the yellow-haired young man who had a conflict with him before, and the two white-haired couples with gloomy expressions. "Su Shiqiang, who told you to bring outsiders in?" Lu Xingqiao, who also saw Zhang Fengjai entering the villa, stood up suddenly and shouted sternly. Because he could never forget the first time he was beaten and insulted in his life, which was brought to him by this thin boy in front of him. "Master Lu, even if the chairman leaves, only the wife and the young lady can inherit the villa. You, a person of humble status, are probably not qualified to order me." Facing Lu Xingqiao's scolding, Su Shiqiang immediately retorted with a bad look. "Xiao Chao is not qualified to manage you, so am I qualified." Facing Su Shiqiang's rebuttal, the white-haired old man sitting on the sofa asked coldly. "This." He was able to refute Lu Xingqiao because of his current questionable identity, but facing the questioning of the white-haired old man, Su Shiqiang didn't know how to refute. Because the white-haired old man's surname is Lu, and his name is Lu Xiaoqiu. He is not only a director and shareholder of Yongsheng Group, but also Lu Shuhua's biological father, and the chairman's father-in-law. As a housekeeper who works for money, he has no qualifications and confidence to refute the other party. Eagle-headed, sparrow-brained, snake-browed, wolf-eyed. Judging from his appearance alone, the white-haired old man in front of him is not a kind person. Moreover, the other party's initiative to protect the yellow-haired young man made them stand on opposite sides. Therefore, Zhang Fengjai walked in front of Su Shiqiang, blocked the other party's angry gaze, and said indifferently, "Old man, let alone the Shen family's villa, even if it is the Purple Cloud Sea in the imperial capital, I, Zhang Fengjai Luo, can come and go as I please." The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yanyun Yuqi. Chapter 404. Guanghe Huafu, in the Shen family's villa. Arrogant youngster. Zhang Fengjai's arrogant attitude made Xiaoqiu slap the sofa hard, and after a sharp scolding, he turned his head and ordered Lu Xingqiao. Xiao Chao, call the police immediately and say that a thief broke into my Lu family's villa and threatened my Lu family's old man with violence. Okay. After hearing Lu Xiaoqiu's order, Lu Xingqiao agreed excitedly, and then took out his mobile phone and called the police. In response, Zhang Fengjai ordered Su Shiqiang without paying any attention. Butler Su, take me to see the chairman quickly. After looking at Lu Xiaoqiu with hateful eyes, Su Shiqiang nodded, and then took Zhang Fengjai around a screen with auspicious dragons and phoenixes, and came to the study where Shen Zhenghao usually worked. At this time, a very special fragrance was exuded in the antique study. At this moment, Shen Zhenghao was crawling on the desk near the window sill, and his wife Lu Shuhua stood beside him with a dull look. Ah! When Zhang Fengjai smelled the strange fragrance in the study, he couldn't help but sighed, and a helpless look flashed in his eyes. Because the strange fragrance came from a poison called meteoric soul, which was extracted from Gelsemium elegans, weeping Avalokite tesvara, swallow palm, poinsettia, and datura. It was a kind of poison that could kill people instantly, and it was also one of the few poisons that could harm foundation building masters. Facing a dead person who took this poison, even a great-grandfather who was a master of medicine might not have the ability and means to bring the other party back to life. Zhang Fengjai's sigh woke Lu Shuhua up from her dull state. When she saw Zhang Fengjai, who had mysterious means, she stepped back a few steps with a look of surprise in her eyes, leaving space for Zhang Fengjai to display his medical skills and mysterious means. Although Zhang Fengjai knew that his medical skills could not bring Shen Zhenghao back to life after he took the meteoric soul poison, he still walked to his side. First, he needed to know whether the one soul and two spirits in Shen Zhenghao's sea of consciousness were still there. Second, he wanted to know whether Shen Zhenghao committed suicide or was murdered. Third, he wanted to know whether there was any remaining meteoric soul poison in Shen Zhenghao's hand. He pressed the Chu Hung acupointment on his back with his right hand, and with the control of the acupoints on bones and muscles, he made Shen Zhenghao lie on his back on the boss chair. Looking at Shen Zhenghao with his eyes closed and a trace of blood at the right corner of his mouth, Zhang Fengjai knew that he was willing to commit suicide, otherwise he would not have bitten the corner of his mouth to endure the pain when the poison attacked. He put Shen Zhenghao's arm on the desk, put his fingers on his wrist, and then used the method of pulse diagnosis to carefully check the damage caused by the meteoric soul poison to his body. The 5 internal organs had long been corroded by the poison and turned into black liquid. Most of the blood vessels and meridians were also corroded and broken, and the chance and hope of rescue were completely lost. After mobilizing the gray energy of Danshan to open the heavenly eye, Zhang Fengjai carefully observed his sea of consciousness and finally saw the sleeping one soul and two spirits. He breathed a sigh of relief. As long as the one soul and two spirits in the sea of consciousness were still there, he could use the secret method to summon Shen Zhenghao's 2 souls and 5 spirits from the Nehi bridge. In this way, he could see Shen Loxi for the last time, and he could also choose whether to practice ghost cultivation and stay in the world, or enter the underworld to reincarnate in advance. Then, the heavenly eye moved from his eyebrows to the desk, and immediately saw an opened exquisite small gift box and an exquisite small porcelain bottle. Reaching out to pick up the exquisite small porcelain bottle, first shook it gently, and then put it between his nose and smelled it slightly. Zhang Fengjai knew that the porcelain bottle in his hand was used to hold poison. But unfortunately, the poison in the porcelain bottle had been eaten up by Shen Zhenghao, which also made him lose the opportunity to study the soul-falling poison. After putting the porcelain bottle back on the desk, Zhang Fengjai turned around and shook his head at Su Shiqiang, and then subconsciously glanced at Lu Shuhua, and then a look of surprise and enlightenment flashed in his eyes. Because he just focused on Lu Shuhua with his eyes open, he could clearly see the blood relationship between Lu Shuhua, Lu Xingqiao in the living room, and the 2 white-haired old men. The same blood relationship between the 4 people means that Lu Xingqiao is Lu Shuhua's biological son, which also explains why she gave all the shares of the Lu family group to Lu Xingqiao. However, the only thing that puzzled him was why Lu Shuhua, who was obviously in love with Shen Zhenghao, chose to have a child. Why didn't the shrewd Shen Zhenghao find out? Master. Even Zhang Fengjai, who possessed mysterious means, could not bring Shen Zhenghao back to life. The completely desperate Su Shiqiang threw himself directly in front of the desk, kneeling on the ground and crying bitterly. Lu Shuhua, who also noticed Zhang Fengjai shaking his head helplessly, looked at Shen Zhenghao lying on his back in the boss chair, closed his eyes with a trace of sadness in his eyes, and let the tears drip down the corners of his eyes. At this time, Wang Denmei and Sulitzi helped the awakened but weak Shen Loxi rush into the study. When Shen Loxi saw her father lying on his back in the boss chair, she burst into tears and screamed, "Dad!" Sulitzi, who gestured to Wang Denmei to help Shen Loxi, walked to Zhang Fengjai and asked softly, "Yezi, the chairman." "Sister Litzi, I'm sorry, I can't do anything." Zhang Fengjai shook his head and gestured. "Yezi, what if we ask the great-grandfather to help?" Sulitzi asked desperately. "Alas." Holding Sulitzi's jade hand, Zhang Fengjai looked at Shen Loxi who was crying on Shen Zhenghao, and explained with a sigh. "The soul-falling poison, the difference between yin and yang, the immortals and gods are all headaches when they see it. Sister Litzi, the soul-falling poison taken by the chairman, let alone the great-grandfather, even if Hua Tuo is alive and BNK is reborn, I am afraid the result is powerless. Because the soul-falling poison is one of the few poisons that can harm cultivators like me. Yezi, what should Loxi do next?" Since it has been confirmed that Shen Zhenghao cannot be resurrected, Sulitzi immediately worried about Shen Loxi. Because on the way here just now, she had learned about Shen Loxi's current situation and the troubles she encountered from Zhu Zhenjun. At the same time, the troubles she is facing now also involve her own future. After all, the position of Deputy General Manager, the annual salary and bonus of millions, were given by Shen Zhenghao and Shen Loxi. "Brother, hurry up and find out if Chairman Shen has left a will regarding the group's shares and property, because this is related to Shen Loxi's future rights and interests." The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 405. Shen Family Villa, in the study. Sulitzi's sigh made Zhang Fengjai start to think about how to help Shen Loxi get out of her sad mood and how to resolve the troubles she was facing. But at this moment, Zhu Zhenjun's reminder suddenly came to his ears. Using the sky eye that had not yet been closed, he quickly scanned the study and the desk, and his eyes finally stopped on Shen Zhenghao's nightgown. He flashed to Shen Zhenghao's side, reached out from the inside of his nightgown, took out a brand new envelope, and then opened the envelope and took out a piece of letter paper. After quickly scanning the contents on the letter paper, Zhang Fengjai returned to Zhu Zhenjun's side and handed the letter paper to him. After quickly reading the contents on the letter paper, Zhu Zhenjun thought for a while, and then whispered a reminder to Zhang Fengjai. "Brother, since Chairman Shen transferred all his shares to Shen Loxi before his death, there are two options for Shen Loxi now." "Brother Zhu, please speak," Zhang Fengjai, who was immediately focused, gestured. "The first option is to negotiate with the Lu family for the group's operating rights, sacrificing the dividends and profits of his original shares in exchange for the positions and powers of the group's chairman and general manager. The second option is to directly sell all the original shares at a high price and cash out a huge sum of money that will never be spent in the future." After hearing the suggestion given by Zhu Zhenjun, Zhang Fengjai couldn't help but fall into deep thought. Shen Loxi would definitely not be willing to sell all the original shares at a high price with her personality. Because Yongshen Group was created and developed by her father, it included Shen Zhenghao's hard work for most of his life, as well as his unfulfilled grand wishes. Reducing the profits of dividends in exchange for the group's operating rights, even if Shen Loxi was willing to do so, he would not agree. Because this kind of exchange method will not only make Shen Loxi suffer a lot and hurt, but also will always be constrained by others and unable to display her inner ambitions. What's more, Lu Xingqiao, the yellow-haired boy, is not a good thing at all, and Lu Shuhua's father is even more ruthless. He is worried that when he is not with Shen Loxi, who has a simple personality, will suffer losses. So, he wants to solve the Lu family once and for all. But Lu Shuhua's special identity makes him worry that Shen Loxi will suffer a second injury and may eventually sink into despair. Brother Zhu, is there no other way? Zhang Fengjai asked unwillingly. Brother, in all joint stock companies, equity is the only basis that can determine your status and wealth. Unless you can make Shen Loxi's original shares completely exceed the Lu family, otherwise, she only has the two ways I mentioned just now. Zhu Zhenjun shrugged and explained. Exceed the shares of the Lu family. Hearing the shares mentioned in Zhu Zhenjun's explanation, Zhang Fengjai immediately thought of the 8% original shares owned by Lu Xiaoyi, and a solution immediately flashed through his mind. Then, he winked at Su Shiqiang, who was comforting Shen Loxi, then walked to the corner of the study and asked in a low voice. Butler Su, how far has Lu Xiaoyi's case progressed? The police station has submitted the case to the procuratorate, and the public prosecution procedure will begin next month. Su Shiqiang replied with a hint of hatred in his eyes. Because in his opinion, all the troubles that the Shen family is facing now are rooted in Lu Xingqiao, the evil offspring of Lu Xiaoyi. Butler Su, has Lu Xiaoyi's shares in the group been transferred to Lu Xingqiao? Zhang Fengjai continued to ask. Not yet. Su Shiqiang explained, shaking his head. However, the old man of the Lu family has already entrusted the lawyer responsible for defense to go through the procedures for the transfer of shares the day after tomorrow, and specifically transfer it to the kid of Lu Xingqiao. Hearing that the shares in Lu Xiaoyi's hands had not yet been transferred, Zhang Fengjai secretly breathed a sigh of relief, and hurriedly turned to ask Zhu Zhenjun about the procedures for the transfer of shares. After hearing Zhang Fengjai's question, Zhu Zhenjun recalled the share changes he had experienced, and immediately felt a headache and reminded him. Brother, the transfer procedure of the original shares is very complicated, and it is not possible to explain it clearly in a few words, but you can let a professional lawyer handle it. After hearing Zhu Zhenjun's proposal, Zhang Fengjai thought of the defense lawyer in charge of the share transfer mentioned by Su Shiqiang just now, and he already had a way to increase Shen Loxi's shares in his heart. Afterwards, he asked Su Shiqiang to inquire about the information of the lawyer responsible for defending Lu Xiaoyi, and to investigate the time and route of his going to the prison. Mom, you forced my dad to death. I will never forgive you in my life. After repeated persuasion from Sulitzi, Wang Denmei, He Tongtong, Zhuang Jian, Xiao Yuxuan and Lu Yui, Shen Loxi gradually woke up from her grief, suddenly stood up and walked to Lu Shuhua, then gnashed her teeth and roared. Opening his eyes and wiping away his tears, Lu Shuhua said with a cold expression. Loxi, who is right and who is wrong between me and your father? Did I force him to death in the end? You have no right to question and resent me. You. Having already forced his father to commit suicide by taking poison, he did not allow his own daughter to question and question. Lu Shuhua's cold and tough attitude made Shen Loxi so angry that she could not speak. Ms. Lu, do I know if I, Zhang Fengjai, have the qualifications to question and interrogate you? Walking up to Shen Loxi, Zhang Fengjai looked directly into Lu Shuhua's eyes and asked with a hint of sarcasm. Facing Zhang Fengjai, who took the initiative to stand up, Lu Shuhua's eyes flashed with a trace of panic, and then he said with a colder and more sarcastic expression. You are just a bodyguard who works for money. Let alone the qualifications to question and interrogate, you are not even qualified to enter my Shen family villa now, because you have been fired now. Facing Lu Shuhua's decision to fire him without authorization, Zhang Fengjai chuckled and hit back. Ms. Lu, the person who hired me as a bodyguard is Mr. Shen, and the person who is responsible for paying my salary is the chairman. I'm afraid you are not qualified to fire me yet. That's right. Zhu Zhenjun walked up to Zhang Fengjai, shook the letter paper in his hand, and also laughed back. Ms. Liu, before Chairman Shen passed away, he had transferred all of his 38% of shares and his parents' 6% of shares to Mr. Shen, which brought Mr. Shen's original shareholding ratio to 49%. That is to say, before you got Lu Xiaoyi's 8% of the original shares, Mr. Shen had absolute control over the entire group, so you are not qualified to interfere with any decisions made by Mr. Shen. At the same time, the only registered owner of this villa is Chairman Shen. According to the provisions of our country's inheritance law, only Chairman Shen's parents, you and Mr. Shen, are eligible to inherit. If you calculate it according to the proportion of inheriting the villa, not only are you not qualified to drive my brothers away, but Mr. Shen can now drive the 3 people in the living room out of the villa. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 406. Shen Family Villa, in the Study. After hearing Zhu Zhenjun's well-reasoned and well-organized counterattack, Shen Loxi turned around and ordered Su Shiqiang with a flash of hatred in her eyes. Uncle Su, drive those 3 hateful guys out of the villa immediately. Yes, miss. After hearing Shen Loxi's order, Su Shiqiang immediately responded excitedly, then turned around and picked up the baseball bat behind the study door. Because he knew that Lu Xiaoqiu, who had a bad temper and was stubborn, would definitely bully others. If he didn't use some force, the other party would never leave the villa honestly. At the same time, he also took the opportunity to retaliate for the grievances he had suffered during this period. But at this moment, Zhang Fengjai suddenly stopped him. Butler Su, wait a moment. After signaling Su Shiqiang not to drive away the Lu family for the time being, Zhang Fengjai ignored Shen Loxi's puzzled eyes, and then looked at Lu Shuhua with a sullen face and asked. Ms. Lu, since you just said that the chairman's suicide had nothing to do with you, do you dare to confess your relationship with Lu Xinchao now? Xiaoqiao is the illegitimate son of my brother Lu Xiaoyi, that is, my nephew and the grandson of my parents. Lu Shuhua took a deep breath and forcibly suppressed his inner anger, and replied indifferently. Mom, you know Yezi's fortune-telling ability. Since he said that the boy is not my uncle's biological son, then there is definitely no direct blood relationship between them. Why don't you want him to do a paternity test with my uncle? Facing her mother, who was not sure to believe Zhang Fengjai's judgment, Shen Loxi couldn't help complaining. Loxi, the surname Zhang is not a god, you can be sure that he will not make a mistake 100%. After looking at Shen Loxi with an unhappy look, Lu Shuhua first questioned Zhang Fengjai's physiognomy ability, and then gave evidence that Lu Xinchao was Lu Xiaoyi's illegitimate son. Moreover, I saw Xiaoqiao born with my own eyes, and I have been secretly supporting him over the years, so I am 100% sure that Xiaoqiao is the blood of my Lu family. Faced with the evidence Lu Shuhua gave with confidence, Shen Loxi and Su Shiqiang cast doubtful eyes at Zhang Fengjai. It was because Zhang Fengjai pointed out that Lu Xinchao was not the blood of Lu Xiaoyi that the subsequent equity dispute between the Shen family and the Lu family was triggered, and eventually led to Shen Zhenggao's suicide. That's right. Not only did Zhang Fengjai not care about the doubtful eyes of Shen Loxi and Su Shiqiang, but he nodded and agreed with the evidence Lu Shuhua had just given. Ms. Lu, you saw Lu Xinchao born with your own eyes, and Lu Xinchao is indeed the direct blood of your Lu family. But, speaking of this, Zhang Fengjai turned his head and glanced at Shen Zhenggao, who was lying on his back in the boss chair, and continued with a trace of pity in his eyes. However, the reason why you can witness all this with your own eyes is because Lu Xinchao is the child born from your belly. That is to say, Lu Xingqiao is your biological son and the grandson of your parents, so he is exactly like Mr. Shen, and has the blood of your Lu family flowing in his body. The shocking secret revealed by Zhang Fengjie after the change of tone was like a bolt from the blue, not only making Lu Shuhua's face pale as paper in an instant, but also making everyone at the scene look unbelievable. Yezi, although I hate her for forcing my father to death, you can't just insult my mother's innocence just to vent my anger. Shen Loxi, who quickly recovered from the shock, criticized in a very unhappy tone. After all, she knew her mother very well and didn't believe that she would do the ugly thing of having an affair and having a child during marriage. As the saying goes, mother's love is the greatest love in the world, but it is also the most selfish love in the world. Facing Shen Loxi's unhappy criticism, Zhang Fengjie reminded without any care. Boss Shen, if Lu Xingqiao was just your uncle's son, your mother would be willing to give him the entire group, and she would not hesitate to force your father to death for this. Mom, what is going on? Zhang Fengjie's reminder is very worthy of scrutiny and deep thought, which made everyone at the scene immediately look at Lu Shuhua, whose face was as pale as paper, and Shen Loxi, as a child, asked with a gloomy face. Mr. Zhang, don't slander me and insult my innocence. Brother Hao and I have loved each other all our lives. How could I betray him? The questioning eyes of the crowd and Shen Loxi's questioning made Lu Shuhua quickly calm down from the panic, and then he defended himself hoarsely. Besides, if Xiao Chao is my biological son, how could Brother Hao not know about it after 10 months of pregnancy? Faced with Lu Shuhua's reasonable excuse, everyone's doubtful eyes immediately turned to Zhang Fengjie. Yes. 10 months of pregnancy, 1 month of rest, even a fool can see the abnormality. What's more, the chairman is a smart and capable man, there is no reason why he can't notice it. This is exactly what I can't understand. But, faced with Lu Shuhua's defense and counterattack, Zhang Fengjie nodded in agreement, but continued to speak with a sudden change of tone. However, based on the development history of the group that I learned when I was working in the company, combined with Lu Xingqiao's current age, 20 years ago, Yongsheng Group was just a small company that had just been established for a few years, and all business and projects required the chairman to do it himself. Everyone knows that the construction and development of a project, from the day of breaking ground to the final completion and sales, the time span in between can be as short as 1 year, and as long as 2 or 3 years. With such a long time span, the chairman lives and eats on the project site, which fully meets the time you need to have an affair and have a child. Moreover, after a woman becomes pregnant, it takes at least 4 to 5 months for her pregnancy to really show, so the time she needs to pay attention is only about half a year. For you who live in your mother's house all year round, it is easy to hide the secret of having an affair and having a child. Faced with Zhang Fengjie's equally reasonable speculation, everyone's questioning eyes turned to Lu Shuhua. Mr. Zhang, Brother Hao and I are married and have a family after free love. We love each other deeply and swear that we will never leave each other for the rest of our lives. Why should I go against secular morality and have an affair and have a child? What good does this do for me? Lu Shuhua, who has completely controlled his panic, deliberately said with a hint of anger. Lu Shuhua's seemingly reasonable counterattack made everyone's questioning eyes turn to Zhang Fengjie again. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 407. Shen Family Villa, in the Study. Yes. There is absolutely no reason for a loving couple to betray each other within a few years of marriage. However, after nodding his head in agreement with Lu Shuhua's counterattack, Zhang Fengjie continued to use a turning tone to speak. However, is there such a possibility? A pair of parents who are extremely patriarchal, when they lose the qualification to obtain direct blood descendants, will they place the hope of inheriting the family bloodline on their married daughter, and at the same time, the married daughter is very filial and obedient? When facing Zhang Fengjie's reasons for refuting the counterattack, Lu Shuhua had no time to continue to counterattack, and Shen Loxi took the lead in questioning. Yezi, I am also the granddaughter of my grandparents, and I also have the blood of the Lu family flowing in my body. I can also carry the blood inheritance of the Lu family in the future. They have no reason to do this. No, you are wrong. After shaking his head directly to deny Shen Loxi's self-indulgent speculation, Zhang Fengjai stretched out two fingers to explain. First, you are a girl and will marry someone else in the future. In the eyes of your grandparents who are extremely patriarchal, you are an outsider who loses money. Second, although you have the blood of the Lu family flowing in your body, you also have half of the blood of the Shen family, which does not meet the blood inheritance qualifications they recognize. Speaking of this, Zhang Fengjai looked up at Lu Shuhua, whose eyes were once again filled with panic, and speculated with a hint of contempt. If I am not mistaken, the person you cheated on and gave birth to a child with, Lu Xingqiu's biological father, should be a relative of your Lu family who has not yet passed away. If Lu Shuhua's cheating on his child brought a shock like a bolt from the blue to everyone at the scene, then the fact that the person cheated on was a relative who was related to him completely broke the cognition of everyone at the scene and the limit that Shen Loxi could bear. No, this is impossible. How could my grandparents do such a ridiculous thing? Shen Loxi shook her head vigorously to deny the scandal that violated ethics and morality and humiliated the family tradition. Ignoring Shen Loxi's self-denial, Zhang Fengjai stared at Lu Shuhua, whose face was gradually turning pale, and continued to question him with a cold expression. With the will and endurance that the chairman has honed in the business world for more than 20 years, even if he found out that you had cheated on him and had a child, he would at most choose to divorce you and part ways with you. But he finally chose to end his life by taking poison. I'm afraid he not only knew about your conspiracy to cheat on you and have a child, but also found out who the biological father of the illegitimate child was, and he was his most trusted and respected confidant. Lu Xiaohe, the group's financial director. Lu Xiaohe. As the former director of the sales department, the financial department was the department that Sulitzi had the most frequent contact with, and was the most familiar and understood. Thinking that the financial director Lu Xiaohe was not only Lu Shuhua's cousin, but also deeply trusted and respected by the chairman, and had the decision-making and signing power for millions of funds. At the same time, during the time when Lu Xingqiu was working, he deliberately kept a certain distance. She immediately guessed that Lu Xiaohe was the object of Lu Shuhua's cheating and having a child. Regardless of whether it was a reasonable speculation or a mysterious method, Zhang Fengjai's continuous questioning just now completely defeated Shen Loxi's rationality, which made her unable to help but shout at Lu Shuhua. Tell me, is this true? Faced with Zhang Fengjai's speculation that was completely close to the facts, Sulitzi's successful guess about the cheating and childbearing object, and her biological daughter's harsh questioning, Lu Shuhua slowly closed her eyes full of fear. Taking a deep breath, Lu Shuhua opened her eyes again, and the look of fear in her eyes was replaced by indifference. She nodded and admitted. Yes, Xiao Chao is indeed the son of my cousin Xiaohe and me, and your father chose to commit suicide after knowing the truth. Why? Since she was sensible, her parents have been a loving couple in front of her. Not only have they never quarreled, but they have also doted on her. Therefore, at the moment when her mother nodded in approval, the belief in happiness that she had always held onto in her heart instantly collapsed, and Shen Loxi shouted at the top of her lungs like a madman. That's because your father was the first to do something that was sorry for me and the Lu family. Since she chose to admit the scandal that violated secular ethics, Lu Shuhua also broke the jar and said the grievances and dissatisfaction that she had accumulated for many years. The 2 million funds for the registration and development of Yongsheng Group were given by my parents. The money-making projects that the company was able to undertake in the early stage were all through my parents' connections and relationships. It can be said that without the strong support of my parents, there would be no Yongsheng Group now. Pointing at Shen Zhenghao lying on the boss chair, Lu Shuhua said with hatred in her eyes. But what about your father? Not only does he not know how to be grateful, but he wants to reduce the original shares in my Lu family's hands and plunder the wealth that belongs to my Lu family by means of the group's listing. He was the first to be unkind, so don't blame me for being ungrateful. Lu Shuhua said in a gentle tone after his eyes turned from Shen Zhenghao to Shen Loxi, and the hatred in his eyes was replaced by tenderness. Loxi, according to my original idea, I wanted Xiao Chao to learn the group's business well, so that he could smoothly take over the position of general manager and chairman in the future, and then prepare a generous dowry for you, so that you and your beloved man can live a happy life of your own. Looking from Shen Loxi to Zhang Fengjai, the tenderness in his eyes was replaced by hatred, and Lu Shuhua accused with a slightly ferocious look. But it's all because of the boy surnamed Zhang who meddled in other people's business and exposed that Xiao Chao had no blood relationship with your uncle, which aroused your father's suspicion, and investigated me and my cousin. In the end, he couldn't stand the blow and chose to commit suicide by swallowing poison. Ms. Lu, you are wrong. Facing Lu Shuhua's unwarranted accusations, Zhang Fengjai walked to Shen Loxi, stretched out his hand and patted her Baiwei appointment to prevent the emotional loss of control caused by the collapse of faith, which would hurt her mind and heart, and then looked up at Lu Shuhua's rebuttal. At the beginning, the reason why I pointed out the relationship between Lu Xingqiao and Minister Lu was that I didn't want your Shen family and Lu family to be deceived by Lu Xingqiao, and I didn't want to see the group created by the chairman go bankrupt in the end. Because Lu Xingqiao's face belongs to the fate of a short life, lack of wealth, incomplete blessings and luck, and a disaster star who doesn't recognize his relatives. This is also God's punishment for your close relationship. If you hand the fate of the Shen family and the Lu family to him, then in a year at the shortest, Yongshen group will completely decline, and in 3 years at the longest, your Lu family will face the danger of family destruction. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 408. Shen Family Villa, in the study. Lu Shuhua had also seen Zhang Fengjai's fortune-telling skills and abilities more than once, so when she heard about Lu Xingqiao's future fate, a hint of hesitation flashed in her eyes. But at this moment, a serious rebuke suddenly came from behind everyone. Nonsense! Accompanied by the serious rebuke, Lu Xiaoqiu, with his hands behind his back, walked into the study with Lu and Lu Xingqiao with a solemn face, and then glared at Zhang Fengjai's warning. The great leader once taught us that the theory of feng shui and destiny is a feudal superstition of monsters and demons, a crime that violates public security management, and will be arrested and imprisoned. After seriously warning Zhang Fengjai, Lu Xiaoqiu looked directly at Lu Shuhua's instructions. Ziahua, I have just contacted lawyer Wu. He can go to the prison to see Xiao Ei alone now, and try to complete the transfer of the group's shares in the afternoon, and then let Chao take over the group formally tomorrow and become the chairman of Yongshen Group. Yes, father, Lu Shuhua, with a trace of fear in his eyes, nodded in agreement. Using the attack of family affection and physiognomy, Lu Shuhua finally felt a little guilty about Shen Zhenghao and Shen Loxi, and hesitated about Lu Xingqiao. However, because of the appearance of this old guy in front of him, his efforts just now failed, which made Zhang Fengjai feel extremely angry and ordered Su Shiqiang. Butler Su, this is the villa of the Shen family, kick out the irrelevant people. As long as Lu Xingqiao obtains 51% of the original shares of the group, his position as butler will come to an end. At the same time, the counterattacks between Zhang Fengjai and Lu Shuhua just now let him know that the real mastermind behind the chairman's suicide by taking poison was the old guy in front of him. So, the moment he heard Zhang Fengjai's order, Su Shiqiang flashed in front of Lu Xiaoqiu, and threatened with a hint of excitement. Lu Xiaoqiu, I count to 3. If you don't get out of the Shen family villa immediately, then don't blame me for not recognizing people with the stick in my hand. You are just a servant who works for money. I don't think you dare, Facing Su Shiqiang's threat, Lu Xiaoqiu said with a livid face. 1, 2, 3. Slave. In Lu Xiaoqiu's eyes, he was actually a lowly servant in ancient times, which made Su Shiqiang suddenly surge with an unknown anger. Then, he quickly counted the 3 numbers in the countdown within 1 second, and immediately swung the baseball bat in his hand and hit Lu Xiaoqiu's right shoulder directly. Ah! Lu Xiaoqiu, who seemed to feel his bones being smashed, couldn't help but groan in pain. At the same time, Lu Shuhua, whose face suddenly changed, immediately stood in front of him, stopping Su Shiqiang from swinging the baseball bat for the second time, and then shouted with a hint of coldness in his eyes. "Stop, I'll take them away now." Then, Lu Shuhua forcibly pushed Lu Xiaoqiu out of the study and took them directly away from the Shen family's villa. The mother's personal admission and the final move that still sided with the Lu family made Shen Loxi, who was completely desperate, fall directly to the ground, looking forward with numbness in her eyes. "Sister Litsi, Denmei, you all go out first." The sudden family change was a mental and psychological blow to Shen Loxi, who had always been smooth sailing. If she wanted to cheer her up again, she had to find emotional support again and have a goal to strive for again, so Zhang Fengjai planned to reveal his plan to her. But whether it was emotional support or his plan to seize the original shares, it was not convenient for too many people to know, so he could only let everyone in the study leave temporarily. "Yezi, no matter what method you use, you must cheer Logo 11 up again before leaving the study," Sulitsi reminded very generously. "I will." After nodding in reply, Zhang Fengjai reminded Su Shiqiang. "Butler Su, don't forget what I just told you." "Master Zhang, please rest assured, I will go to investigate the lawyer surnamed Wu now." After nodding vigorously, Su Shiqiang turned around and rushed out of the study first. After everyone left the study, Zhang Fengjai reached out to close the door of the study, then sat next to Shen Loxi, put his arm around her shoulders and asked, "Loxi, do you want to see the chairman again?" The numbness in her eyes was gradually replaced by vitality, and Shen Loxi turned her head to look into Zhang Fengjai's eyes and asked, "Yezi, can I still see my father?" "Of course." While nodding to confirm, Zhang Fengjai pointed to Shen Zhenggao lying on the boss chair and said, "Although the chairman has left, there are still 1 soul and 2 spirits left in his body. I can use the residual soul and Taoist magic to connect to the Nehi bridge in the underworld, forcibly call back the 2 souls and 5 spirits that left the chairman, and then let his intact soul stand in front of you." "Yezi, thank you." In Chinese folklore, there is a legend that once you enter the Nehi bridge, the yin and yang are separated. Therefore, although Zhang Fengjai's tone of explanation seemed very relaxed, Shen Loxi knew that performing the Taoist magic to call back her father's soul must be very risky for Zhang Fengjai, which made her feel a little warm and sweet in her heart and thanked him. "Silly girl, do you still need to be so polite between you and me?" Reaching out to scratch Shen Loxi's nose, Zhang Fengjai criticized her dissatisfiedly and continued to ask, "Loxi, do you know why Minister Lu confessed his guilt obediently? It seems that he took the initiative to admit his fault because of his conscience." Shen Loxi replied with a lack of confidence. "Tisk." In response, Zhang Fengjai sneered disdainfully and asked back, "Do you believe this reason yourself?" Shen Loxi, who was even less confident, lowered her head in embarrassment. "Loxi, in fact, Minister Lu took the initiative to confess his guilt because he was possessed by the evil spirit that he killed. Everything he does now is controlled by the evil spirit." After hearing Zhang Fengjai's explanation, Shen Loxi's body trembled slightly and looked up at Zhang Fengjai, with a look of enlightenment in his eyes. No wonder when he went to visit his uncle, he sometimes slapped himself in resentment and self-blame, sometimes roared in anger and cried out for injustice, sometimes talked to himself alone, and sometimes knelt down alone to beg for mercy. It turned out that all this was caused by the evil spirit behind the scenes. "Loxi, will you blame me for not saving him? Facing Shen Loxi's gaze, Zhang Fengjai asked with some concern. After all, Shen Loxi knew that he had the ability and means to catch ghosts. Leaning gently on Zhang Fengjai's shoulder, Shen Loxi said with a gentle expression. Yes, even before I broke up with the Lu family completely, for the heinous crimes committed by my uncle, I would not only not blame you, but also support you with both hands. Shen Loxi's deep understanding of justice made Zhang Fengjai secretly relieved, and he officially began to reveal his plan. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 409. Shen's Villa, Living Room. Junzi, do you think Yezi can cheer up Mr. Shen again? Looking at the watch on his wrist, he found that the time for comfort had passed for nearly half an hour. He Tong turned his head to look at Zhang Fengjai and Shen Loxi, who still hadn't left the study, with a worried look in his eyes. Although it was the first time he met and knew Shen Loxi, the sudden blow she faced and the tragic experience she was about to endure made he Tong suddenly think of the memory of being alone on the street on the day she was dumped by her boyfriend, and a kind of empathy and sadness emerged in his heart. Tong, don't worry. Reaching out to turn he Tong's head back, looking directly into her worried eyes, Zhu Zhenjun assured confidently. My brother is an omniscient and omnipotent immortal. He can definitely cheer up the girl surnamed Shen. Moreover, the girl surnamed Shen looks weak, but in fact she is stronger than anyone else. Even without my brother's comfort, she can definitely cheer up again. Really? He Tong asked with some disbelief. After all, the suicide of her father, the ruthless betrayal of her mother, and the uncertainty of her future fate are not something a weak girl can bear alone. Absolutely true. Facing he Tong's doubts, Zhu Zhenjun explained with a hint of admiration in his eyes. Tong, although Yongsheng Group was also a star enterprise in Ningji City's real estate industry 3 years ago, the gap between it and leading groups such as Zhuolong and Torch is really not a little bit. But since Shen Yetu joined the group as general manager, with the architectural concept combining Chinese and Western and the sales method of caring for people, in just over 2 years, Yongsheng Group has not only become one of the 3 giants in Ningji City's real estate industry, but also its financial resources are not inferior to Torch Group. I think this is also the reason why Chairman Shen wants to dilute the shares in the hands of the Lu family through the means of listing, because he wants to increase Shen Yetu's shares and authority. So, as long as Shen Yetu has not lost control of Yongsheng Group, as long as she has not fulfilled Shen Gao's wish to become the leader of Dongshan Province's real estate, then she will cheer herself up again. As Zhu Zhenjun's explanation fell, the door of the study was suddenly opened, and Zhang Fengjai and Shen Loxi walked out of the study side by side. Although the redness of her eyes showed that she had just cried bitterly, her tenacious eyes and upright body were enough to prove that she had regained her spirits, which made everyone in the living room secretly relieved. Sister Litsi, give me 5 days. After I deal with my father's funeral and the equity dispute of the group, I will return to the group to officially work. Walking to Sulitsi, Shen Loxi held her hands and asked. So, not only will you continue to work hard to manage the company's business, but you will also delay your close reunion with Yezi. Loxi, don't worry, let alone 5 days, even if it's 10 days or half a month, I will definitely manage the company properly. After looking at Zhang Fengjai with a hint of tenderness and apology in her eyes, Sulitsi nodded vigorously and promised. Thank you, Sister Litsi. After nodding and thanking, Shen Loxi walked to Zhuang Jian and asked solemnly. Sister Yan, Yezi once introduced your identity to me. I know that you can influence the political circles of Ningji City, so I beg you to warn some people in the political circles not to interfere in the feud between the Shen family and the Lu family. No problem. With Zhang Fengjai's relationship, let alone not interfering in the feud between the Shen family and the Liu family. Even if she turned around to help Shen Loxi deal with the Liu family, Zhuang Jian would agree without hesitation. Thank you, Sister Yan. Shen Loxi turned to Zhu Zhenjun with a thank you and continued to ask solemnly. Master Zhu, I know that you are not only a genius in business, but also accustomed to retaining sufficient cash flow. If Yezi helps me win the shares of the control group, the Liu family will definitely sell all their original shares immediately. I hope you can buy them all to avoid falling into the hands of Zhulang Group and Torch Group. With the current scale of Yongsheng Group, more than 40% of the original shares have a market value of nearly 3.5 billion. Although he could completely take over all the shares of the Liu family with the cash he had reserved, he had now successfully obtained the old village renovation project of 3 villages including Liuxing, which required a large amount of funds to be invested in the early stage. At the same time, after completely breaking up with the family, he also needed to reserve enough funds to guard against the family's blockade in the stock market. Therefore, facing Shen Loxi's plea, Zhu Zhenjun couldn't help but frown. Master Zhu, please rest assured that I will buy back all the shares from you within half a year at a price increase of 6% of the market value. When Zhu Zhenjun heard the conditions given by Shen Loxi, he thought about it for a while, and then his body trembled slightly, and asked with a look of shock in his eyes. You want to develop the Shen family into a hidden family? For ordinary people in China, the most intuitive feeling of the wealth of the rich is undoubtedly the list of rich people who are willing to obey or not, which is launched every year and every quarter. In fact, what ordinary people don't know is that whether it is China, which is good at keeping a low profile, or the West, which advocates democracy, the real rich people are not the rich people on the list, but those hidden families that never show their talents, which are the so-called aristocrats in the West. To become a hidden family, at least 4 conditions must be met at the same time. The first condition is that the wealth accumulated by the family is at least 10 times that of the richest person on the rich list every year. The second condition is that it has been passed down for at least 3 generations and has a complete aristocratic education system. The third condition is that no family member is allowed to get involved in politics and the military, and avoid the vortex of political struggles. The fourth condition is not to make enough wealth through virtual economic means. To put it simply, the industry operated must never be listed. At the beginning, when Zhu Zhenjun heard the family elders mention the 4 conditions for becoming a hidden family, he could understand the first 3 conditions. Only for the 4th condition, he was very confused. After all, going public is equivalent to raising money, and it is the best way to raise a large amount of funds in the shortest possible time. Later, after operating several of his companies to go public and understanding the relationship between cause and effect, he gradually understood the meaning of the 4th condition. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 410. Shen Family Villa, in the Living Room. In today's world economic development, especially in China's economic development system, whether it is e-commerce, finance and the stock market, they are all virtual economic entities. It seems to be a beneficial means to promote rapid economic development and improve the national economy, but in fact it is a rootless source without any creativity and cannot withstand too many economic storms. At the same time, the impact of e-commerce, finance and the stock market on the real economy will seriously affect the lives of ordinary people. Therefore, what seems to be free competition in the market economy, in fact, the causal relationship caused during the development process will eventually affect the wealth and luck of future generations, and will even retaliate to the next generation of reincarnation. Shen Loxi's acquisition of all the original shares of the group not only guarantees her 100% control over the group, but also prevents her from being criticized and forced into submission by other shareholders for making money without going public. As for the rapid accumulation of wealth and the inheritance of blood for more than 3 generations, it is not difficult to successfully complete it with the help of Zhang Fenjai, an omnipotent Taoist monk. but it's a pity that Shen Loxi's next questioning, full of doubts, made his previous guess a complete waste of emotion. Master Zhu, what is a hidden family? Haha. It's nothing. After shaking his head with a slightly embarrassed smile, Zhu Zhenjun nodded and agreed. Okay, as long as the Lu family is willing to sell the original shares, I will invest in buying them all, and let you buy them back at the market value of the investment afterwards. I will never take any advantage of you. Master Zhu, thank you very much. Repurchasing it at a price of 6% of the market value would cost at least nearly 200 million yuan, which is almost equivalent to all the profits of a high-quality project. Therefore, facing Zhu Zhenjun's generosity and help, Shen Loxi thanked her excitedly, turned around and walked to Xiao Yuxuan, held her hand tightly and begged. Sister Yuxuan, you have seen my current situation. I am in urgent need of support and help from my own people, so can you come to Yongsheng Group to help me? Sister Luo 11, my major is vocal music. I only know how to play musical instruments and sing. I don't know anything about real estate projects. Not to mention the existence of Zhang Fenjai's real girlfriend Sulitzi, she was unwilling to work at Yongsheng Group from the bottom of her heart. Moreover, even if she overcomes her secret rivalry, she still doesn't know what she can do or how she can help Shen Loxi. Therefore, Xiao Yuxuan could only shake her head and refuse. Sister Yuxuan, you are beautiful, have an outstanding figure, and have a nice voice. You can start with sales, and then take over the position of sales director step by step, so that Sister Litzi can spare more time to deal with the overall group. Developing business. Shen Loxi, who had already arranged for Xiao Yuxuan, immediately gave her a suitable job and a path for future development and advancement. As a veteran in love, Zhu Zhenjun had long noticed Shen Loxi and Xiao Yuxuan's unusual feelings for Zhang Fenjai. At the same time, considering the possibility of Sulitzi taking over as general manager, he vaguely guessed Shen Loxi's true intention and quietly gave Zhang Fenjai a thumbs up. But at this moment, a slender jade hand suddenly reached out to his waist. Then, he Tong asked with a seemingly gentle smile on his face, but in fact it was quite dangerous. Tong, how is that possible? Facing He Tong's murderous questions, Zhu Zhenjun immediately put on a gentleman's posture and gestured. I, Zhu Zhenjun, am a rare infatuated man in the world. I have only loved one woman, He Tong, for the rest of my life. How could I have such irresponsible thoughts? Although Zhu Zhenjun betrayed his brothers at the critical moment to avoid being punished on his waist, he was also glared at by Zhang Fenjai, Sulitzi, Zhuang Jian, Shen Loxi and Xiao Yuxuan. Brother Zhu, my heart hurts so much right now. I'm afraid I can't cook delicious monster barbecue for you. Zhang Fenjai, who held his heart tightly with his right hand, threatened as if he was in unbearable pain. Sister Tong, now the entire villa is occupied by me and butler Su. It's really lonely and deserted. Why don't you move in and stay with me for a while? Shen Loxi held He Tong's jade hand tightly. He begged with a pitiful look. Looking forward to the better quality of monster flesh and blood, which can make his body stronger, so that he can have enough energy to deal with the family's revenge and attacks. The reunion with He Tong just now made them so inseparable that they wanted to be together every day. Therefore, Zhang Fenjai and Shen Loxi's revenge methods hit Zhu Zhenjun's weakness, making him look at Zhang Fenjai eagerly with a flattering smile on his face. Zhang Fenjai pretended to turn a blind eye to this, forcing Zhu Zhenjun to turn around and walk to Shen Loxi and others, planning to apologize solemnly. But at this moment, Su Shiqiang, who was out investigating the situation of lawyer surnamed Wu, hurried back. Master Zhang, the lawyer responsible for defending Minister Lu is named Wu Quilai. He is a gold medal lawyer from the Imperial Capital Gale law firm. He rushed to Jingqiao prison 10 minutes ago to see Minister Lu. After hearing Su Shiqiang's introduction, Zhang Fenjai's expression changed slightly and he immediately gave instructions. Butler Su, arrange a quiet guest room for me immediately. Master Zhang, please come with me. After Su Shiqiang nodded, he quickly took Zhang Fengjai to a relatively spacious guest room on the second floor. After signaling Su Shiqiang to close the door and leave the guest room, Zhang Fengjai walked to the windowsill and sat cross-legged, then took out the photo of Li Changwan who had lived there before, and used the remaining evil spirits and ghosts in the photo to start to communicate with the evil spirit Li Changwan who controlled Lu Xiaoyi's consciousness. Shen Loxi, who knew clearly that Zhang Fengjai had planned to seize the original shares, immediately took out his mobile phone to contact the lawyer specially hired by the group, asking him to prepare some information and means for the share change, and rushed to Jinqiao prison, then sat on the sofa and stared at the door of the guest room nervously, waiting for the result of Zhang Fengjai's final spell. Time passed by minute by minute. When the wall clock in the living room rang 10:30, the tightly closed door of the guest room slowly opened, and Zhang Fengjai, with a smile on his face, stepped out of the guest room, and then ordered Shen Loxi, who looked nervous. Loxi, go. After hearing Zhang Fengjai's order, Shen Loxi immediately turned his head and ordered Wang Denmiai. Denmiai, go drive my father's luxury car right now. Then, she asked Zhuang Jian again. Sister Yan, please accompany me. No problem. After nodding to agree to Shen Loxi's request, Zhuang Jian and the other two quickly left the villa, while Zhang Fengjai nodded to everyone in the living room, returned to the guest room, closed the door, and continued to sit cross-legged on the windowsill of the guest room.